Love is Blind may be a hot flop, but today I'm joined by my hot friend, Tomasilienne, to help me go through all things Love is Blind season 8. Welcome to the show.
Yay! Thank you for having me. It's only fun because we get to talk about it together.
Exactly. We will get through this together. This season, we see literally, that saying, like, same person, different font. They're not even in a different font.
Yeah.
It's same person, same font, all across the board. Everybody is so hard to tell apart. And it's lacking diversity. And I definitely believe that that's part of why the show is so unenjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just incredibly homogenous, which I understand it's a reflection, somewhat of a reflection of the areas they're filming in. But I've even seen people online like talking about how like this is not reflective of where they live in Minnesota. Wait, Minneapolis? Yeah, right?
Minnesota's the state, Minneapolis is the
Yes.
city.
Okay, so like I've seen people talking about it like they're saying there is diversity there, not
Yes.
a crazy amount, but I think it just even in like I think it's mainly the men, I'll say, they all give the same like energy, the same personality, the same look.
They
Like
all
just
buy the same Chelsea boots,
literally
literally.
like exactly the same style. It's like too homogenous. Like, where it's like, okay, there's not even I don't even know. It makes it unenjoyable because it's just the way that they deal with things, the conversations that they're having. You're not even excited about any of them. Their personalities feel like maybe we're not seeing enough of their personalities. I don't know, but it's just not. It feels like there's a disconnect.
It's so vanilla, pun intended, both ways. It's so vanilla. I also feel like that's very on brand for white people to perceive themselves as being the majority in an area. You know what I mean? Especially probably indicative of like who they surround themselves with, also just the centering of themselves. But it's 58% white. That's a lot of room for other representation. It's like right behind white people being the most majority there, it's black people. So why are we not getting that representation is beyond me. But I'm not going to lie to you, the casting did such a horrible job this season that the people who they did cast, specifically like the men, they're not even really that attractive. You know what I mean?
Exactly. They are
Like,
giving nothing.
and I feel like here I am being a little bit hypocritical because one of my complaints that I have on the dating shows is people being too influencer. Like I'm like, "Oh my God, like another influencer, pick like normal people." However, like not like this. Like maybe not pick normal. Like I don't know. Like this like I said, I'll acknowledge that it's a hypocritical thing for myself, but I just look at them and I'm like, "You're not even spectacular or that extraordinary for there to be so much screen time spent where it's at."
And why can't they just pick people with good personalities? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously, we as the audience know it's not supposed to be about looks, and like, okay, that's the premise, but it doesn't have to be to the point where like these people are not only just looking all the same, kind of like boring looks wise. Like, I guess I should just say lack of diversity looks wise, but then also bringing nothing to the table in any like you know what I mean in
Yes,
any
like the
other
women all parrot the men too. So many of their conversations is just reiterating what the person they're talking to says. It's a lot of mirroring going on this
exactly. It
season.
makes it feel so like intellectually dumbed down in a way if you know what I mean like the connect like the conversations when they're getting excited about their connection. Oh my gosh, we bonded over this. It's like the most basic stuff. I'm trying to think
Like
of
they
an
love
example.
Christmas.
Yes, the Christmas exactly. It's like, okay, everyone loves Christmas. It's like obviously I'm
Right.
generalizing, but like that is not like yes, it's cute, oh whatever, but it's like where's the real, like the real conversations, the real connection. It just feels so like falsified in a
That's
way.
how I felt like going way forward. That's how I felt about Taylor, which we'll get to, and her talking about Daniel finding her on Instagram and her being like, she like acted like you just caught her in like she acted like you just opened up her bathroom stall and just caught her with her pants down. Like she was like, "Oh my God, like my bio is like so personal to me." Listen, your bio says Psalm 41:3. It says I love Taco Bell. It's the same thing that's in thousands of other girls' bios. It's really not that representative of who you are as a person. It's not like that big of you're like that's not your personality. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's really not
honestly,
giving that much away.
but honestly, we talked about this a little bit
Yes.
earlier, and I actually am really grateful you kind of perceived it from a different way when we first both watched it. But like now that you're saying it, I think that is her personality. That's why she's like and that's a lot of their personalities when we're talking about this homogenous, like these people who just
So
have
true.
this certain lifestyle. Like, no offense, being like, I love Taco Bell in my bio as this like Minnesotian white girl. Like, for her, honestly, I really do think it's like he learned a lot about my personality in my bio. Like, I'm sharing a lot about, like it feels like genuinely that is her personality. Like, that's what I'm starting to think, because
That's
at
as
first,
deep as we're getting. That's
honestly,
as, yeah.
because
Yeah.
what else have we seen that is really giving any more depth than that? Like the way that she kept like reiterating, going back to those like four main points about like the Taco Bell, the Christmas, the nurse. She's a nurse, right? I think the nurse saying something like that. It's like, if anyone can just click on your profile and find out that much about you, and that feels like everything, it does feel a little like, okay, so do you like, what are your values, what are
See,
your
I feel like that's people picking things that they think are like either like socially acceptable or they know will be received to talk about. But it's like, I feel like we're not getting anything of like
Right.
who they are. And I feel like that's kind of I feel like what you said is super true, but I also feel like I don't know if they're ultra conscientious that they're on camera because the conversations have been
Mhm.
so ignorant, but I also just feel like they're not themselves. Like it's like
Yeah.
so many of these cast members don't know who they are and they want acceptance from the other person on the other side of the wall. And maybe the experiment like sort of sets them up for that, like trying to earn the acceptance of the person you're
Mhm.
talking to. But yeah, it feels like we're not getting anywhere with any of them.
Yeah, and I think like what you say about the experience allows for that. I think that's a huge part as well. It's like you're going into this kind of molding your like personality around this like want and need to not only like find this like lifelong partner, but also to stay on the show and get, like continue with this experience. And I'm
That
not
part.
saying like every single person is actively thinking about that all the time, but subconsciously still that plays a role in it, right? They're all like, if you really like watch, like they're trying to be like adaptable, malleable to whatever idea. So like the quirkiest version of themselves is that Taco Bell girl. Meanwhile, like that's the stuff we were talking about in like high school, like to be like quirky, like, oh my gosh, I love Taco Bell. Or, I mean, not to like, everyone has their things and like it's cute, it's fun. I'm not like trying to put her down, but also like it very much is making these things that are not personality traits. Christmas and Taco Bell,
Yes.
there's
That's
just
what I
not personality traits.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Like, what is he really uncovering about her? Like, she really lacks a lot of depth if that's what her experience is. But let's jump into episode one because my
Yes.
first note actually kind of changes my opinion on this situation because I didn't remember this. So, Daniel, episode one, the second that he meets Taylor, whom I called Lexi throughout the entirety of the 6 episodes in my notes and in my TikTok videos.
Amazing.
It's crazy. So he talks to Taylor and he gets down on one knee with her immediately. And at first I'm watching this and I thought that he was like a love bomber, like kind of like okay, this is like a bit much, but then like adding the context of he followed her prior on social media, it does seem like he was all in on her specifically because he thought he knew her based off of her socials before. And that is creepy. Like, I'm sure she's thinking back to their first date that they went on and how he drops on one knee, literally their first time meeting. And I think that that is overwhelming. So I do understand why that like threw her off, but I still think that what added to it being creepy, and I know this isn't nice to say, and I don't usually like to talk about people's looks, but I think what added to it being creepy is she's not attracted to him. If she was attracted to him, I think that she would be like, don't love that you found me before, but like, okay, we're doing this because I'm also really attracted to you. You're exactly the person who I would approach at a bar. I don't get that from her. I get like his height, the way he looked, the fact that she remembered him requesting her and she wouldn't even pay him a second glance to like, like engage with him. I feel like that added to the creepiness.
Oh, I agree. And so yeah, basically it's so funny how we like find each other's perspectives and we like kind of come to the same conclusion at the end, because
Yes.
exactly that. Like that was my big thing about being, I guess, on her side in this argument, which is that like literally it is weird no matter what, like, people are saying, "Oh, he could just follow her, never remember her, etc., so on and so forth." The more weird part about it is, like, at some point in those conversations, when you're remembering those, like, key points, like, it is you have previous knowledge, and you are acting differently based on that, and like you said, he was all in on her because of that, but you have the other layer, which is it's probably not a connection, like, I don't like you said, I don't think she's really feeling him, but also, like, I don't really feel like I got all that much from Taylor in the pods in terms of, like, who she really is. It felt like there was only so much, like, so much of a level to get with her, so I couldn't even think, "Okay, this is not the guy for her," or it is, like, one way or the other, because it just felt like, "Oh my god, you love this? I love this." You know what I mean? Like, very, like you said,
Mirroring,
parallel.
like I said, it's
Mirroring, yeah.
literally all season we see that.
Yeah.
The next conversation we see is between Brittany and Devin, and they talk about how I think don't they both coach youth basketball teams?
Yeah. Or
Okay.
yeah, I think they both do, yeah.
Okay, I think he's 28 and she's 34. I think that they had an age gap, but he said that he had dated women who are older than
Yeah.
him before, so that wasn't something that he was like not used to or not
Yeah.
willing to do. It's so interesting because like I really want to like root for Devin, but like throughout this experience, I feel like we barely see him. So I feel like I don't know very much about him. Like I feel like we barely see Devin, we barely see Virginia, and we barely see Brittany. So I feel like this part that we get of them in the beginning, we go like 2 episodes without adding any context to their relationships.
Yeah. I definitely think, yeah, I mean, it's a little weird just timing wise, like where everything is at in the state of the world, because right off the bat, it's giving we remove the DEI initiatives. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yes.
there. And somebody made a joke. I think it was a TikTok I saw somewhere online that somebody said, like, oh, we're being punished because of Tyler and Ashley from last season. Because remember all the baby mama drama? They're like, oh, we
Mhm.
tried to give you black people. And then, of course, this is what happened. So we're taking it away. Like, people are joking about that. But I do think there is something to be said in just kind of like, we get this very homogenous cast. We get the 3 black people that, of course, are in their love triangle, and we're gonna like, you know what I mean? It's not really a priority to go deeper with them. I will say, like, I did, like, I have my notes. I was like, I think I like Devin. Like, I wanted to like him at first, and then I say, like, I'm rooting for Brittany. Like, I'm Brittany, I guess. I'm
Yes.
rooting for her, and I definitely was. But I think for me, like, just like you, I didn't see that much of Devin. I was hoping to see a little bit more. And I did get the sense that he was like authentic, but then also at the same time, like, I remember feeling that way about Tyler last season and being like, oh, he's open up, he's being this, that, and the other. And because we didn't really get to see like anything meaningful, I guess. I still don't know. The only thing for me that put me off of him was later on when his reaction to Brittany like expressing her sexuality to him pretty much. I did think it was, I hate to say it, but there were questions in my mind of like, is this giving like a little bit of like homophobic? Because I'm not saying like consciously, maybe a little bit
Right.
subconsciously, just because the way that he immediately was like put off. And like she even said, I wanted to hear you say, like, that doesn't matter because it doesn't. And he didn't say that and he wasn't reassuring. And then ultimately, we know how it goes. So, anyway, I just think it was very interesting how, like, that wasn't even really further delved into much. Like, the whole pretty much any person of color situation just was kind of like, left a little bit open ended because even with Tiffany, I mean, I guess we'll get there, but yeah, I don't know how to feel about
Devin.
Devin.
Right. It did feel like there was like some sort of undertone of like some internalized homophobia. It would have been nice to see him pick up on the fact that she was experiencing some anxiety upon talking about her sexuality. So perhaps just like one, give her grace, two, don't ask prying questions right now that she may not know the answer to, and three, it could be a conversation that you could have more in depth off camera. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, which definitely, yeah, I agree. Definitely, she's clearly struggling with
Right.
some acceptance of it herself, but I think also, yeah, the awareness wasn't there from him from him and like the support, I guess, because I definitely
Exactly.
do think it is something that can be talked about later. But at the same time, it just in I don't know, like it was clear to me that she was having a hard time even broaching this, right? So I was
Agreed.
hoping for a little bit more from him, but then again, it just kind of is what it is. And that's also why I'm like, okay,
Yes.
well, it sucks because it almost feels like, okay, well, this is their only option for a match, kind of in a weird way. Like at least
I
the
know
way it's
what you
being
mean.
portrayed.
Virginia, also notable. I like the fact that she's an MD. I like the fact that she wrote her dissertation on racial bias in medicine. It was interesting. And it's also interesting that she was an NBA dancer and he's like a
Oh,
basketball
yeah.
coach. Like
She's
it's
so
kind of like a cute.
multifaceted. I really did love that about her, but then also her personality is very calm and chill and relaxed. But
Yes.
she has like so many experiences and she's so highly educated. And I really generally liked her, but I feel like I still don't feel like I like know her, which is weird.
Yes. I know what you mean because we didn't emphasize on it. Okay, so skipping forward a little bit further down episode 1, we saw Virginia, Devin, and Brittany explore their connections. We saw Daniel and Taylor explore their connections. We then see Monica and Joey have a date together. The only reason I can remember their names is because he has long hair, so he's a little bit easier to tell apart from the rest
Yeah.
of the guys. I preemptively had Joey pegged as like an asshole prior to the season. I wasn't sure. He looked like frat guy. He looked like first
Yeah.
one who's drunk at the wedding, like spills beer on himself. But I find him so endearing. And I like that he talked about his sisters. And he says he has 3 sisters. One passed away, but he like doesn't speak about her in past tense. I thought that that was really beautiful.
Me too. Yeah, I actually really like them. I feel like they're pretty authentic. I mean,
Me
it's really
too.
interesting because they both have that like super high energy kind of vibe, but it like works, I guess. I don't know. I feel like it's weird because it is one of those couples that like I didn't really have much to say about, but also like I can see it. Like I can see them working, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Then we talk about Dave. Dave, there's so much to talk about Dave. Dave starts his experience in the pods by going up to each woman and asking, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And he really just tells on himself, like preemptively, because it's like, you clearly have something wrong with you. And so that's why you're asking them this.
And it's funny, like we get what you're trying to do, but like just kind of like read the room, you know?
Yeah, like he starts off and he's like, I've kind of been an ass to women in my dating life. So I kind of wanted to look at myself in that. And it's like, this shouldn't be an experiment.
Yeah.
Is to see if you're a good person. Like this is where people should end up once they're already in like a good spot to have a healthy relationship
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
not the other way around.
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
But things he says that kind of made me laugh. So he says he works in Botox and filler and it's influenced how he looks at women. So he wants to test if he really is that guy that he thinks he is. So he's just flat out saying, like, typically I would judge you, but like I'm going to use this experience to see if I wouldn't. And it reminds me of Clay and Steven from prior seasons. When people tell you who they are, it's not them being emotionally vulnerable or willing to change those things. It's literally them telling you who they are.
Exactly. And it's like he's walking right into the villain arc or whatever. You know, it's like you already are flat out saying like I'm not a good person. I have not been a good person to women in the past. Let's see if I can do better now.
Like, you
Like
can't. Like, you
yeah,
definitely
and if
can't.
you really could or really wanted to, this wouldn't be the way to do it. Come on.
And he starts his date off with Laura. And this is the thing. Again, the women just need to stand up this season. Like, not only are they not having like that deep of conversations across the board for the most part, but like the passiveness is like really irking me. But it's like Dave starts his date out with Laura and she tells him his age and he's like, "So you're no longer attractive
Oh
anymore."
yeah.
Like, I don't care if anybody thinks that that's a joke. Like, you should have walked away immediately. Like, that's when it should
Yeah,
have been
it's
over for you.
not funny. It's just like, ugh, it's just so. I guess this is what they call negging or whatever, which, like, I still don't really understand fully what it is. Like, I'm guessing it's more like roasting or something, but it's like very strange for one, this experiment. You're talking about removing looks and removing these stigmas and these ideas, and this is the kind of joke you make to the person who could be your wife. Like, it's just like, come on.
Yes. And it's also like having started the conversation with that, when his next sentence is, I'm a shallow person, but I don't want to be like that. I'm better than
Yeah.
that. Like that should just tell you that he's not going to treat you with respect.
Yeah, and I don't think some of them necessarily seem to care. Like, if you think about it, even
Yes.
Molly, I think, yeah, Molly, when he was saying his, like, he doesn't believe in politics or something, or politics shouldn't be something to have like differences about or something, like, and she's just like, from what we saw, she's like, yeah, I understand, like, it just seems like across the board, like, besides the one woman, I think it was Sarah, who was trying to challenge the guy about his beliefs and views, like, they're just being so accommodating and so, like, just like heads down, like, all right, like, what, and almost I'm like, do they think they're going to talk about these things later and it's going to be better? Like, I don't know where their head is at, but definitely it's not, yeah,
Yeah.
it's giving stand up.
Because even Sarah, like, okay, you brought that up and then you got engaged to him. You
Exactly.
brought that up and then you accepted his answers as
Exactly. And it's like you're not standing your ground. And I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if it's like because of the show, in the sense of like, there's only so much you can do, and you're not going to get that far if you're sitting there like being like questioning these guys about their political views and like hammering it in and then saying like, you know what, I'm not going to move forward. Like, you're just going to be off the show, right? So I don't know if it has to do with them just not wanting to risk it. I don't know, but it's just like it just makes it doesn't feel good. It just
I
doesn't.
feel like, yeah, I feel like, for example, like we saw Marissa and Ramses have like pretty like
Hmm.
deep conversations regarding politics, and I feel like if they were casting emotionally intelligent people, they would be able to dive right into those conversations and it not be as simple as like, okay, well, you're not featured anymore. But I feel like they purposefully do cast people who don't have that as a priority,
Yeah.
and that's probably why, not blanket statement, but most of them, that's probably why they're getting into these conversations on here.
Yeah.
um I'm looking at my notes and it's funny, I called Molly Bangs for the first 3 episodes before I knew her name. So I said, Dave goes on a date with Bangs, talks about how he had a typical white dude experience. That was like my third red flag already for Dave in the first 10 minutes. I can't explain why that was weird. Like I can't exactly put my finger on it, but like that was weird. It was just weird that he couldn't wait to say that. Like he couldn't wait to tell Molly he was white. Like you had to slip that in somehow. I want to talk about at least this, like with respect, like he talks about like losing his mom 6 years ago, like prior to Love is Blind. But he also talks about how his mom, as he was younger, tried to instill integrity in him.
And that's what I mean, going back to the like, even like last cast versus this cast, the homogenous, the lack of diversity stuff, it does affect the experience, because even something like that where it's like you are already struggling with problems being shallow, problems with women, etc. And then I hate to say it, but your own mother was worried about your integrity and where your integrity lies. Like, that's the core of who you are, right? So I think it's just so telling, because you're not, I don't know, you're still in a place, you're like, what, 30? I think he's 30 or something like that. I'm like, at your big age, there's only so much you can blame on. And he's not even blaming. He's just saying, oh, I had a white guy childhood or whatever. Oh,
Right.
I was privileged. Okay. So then why didn't you go, when you're struggling with integrity, say, hey, like, I need to figure this out because I don't think I'm a good person. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there has to be more, like, more accountability. As you get older in life, there's only so much your parents can do, right, to try to get you there. And if you're an adult, like a 30-year-old adult, I do think it is your responsibility to recognize where you're lacking and want to change or be better, right? Like, and take those actions. So it's like, at a certain point, even if you're reflecting and saying, my mom, she, before she passed, really was trying to get me to a better place.
And you still didn't do anything afterwards to try to
Exactly.
follow up on that. Like
You're
it's
not
not like you
taking any
continued with
action
that.
to get there. Exactly. Yeah, one, obviously, like you said, you're not going to just blame the women or the mother or the parent, but also every person gets to get, when you become an adult, you get to a certain place where you do have some accountability to work on yourself or move past whatever, you know whatever you weren't taught when you were younger, or X, Y, and Z. I just think there has to be some responsibility. And we see this time and time again, especially with, unfortunately, these like white men. They're just kind of like, he keeps talking about these issues, but what are you doing to make any changes?
And are you, or are you just talking about it?
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay. Okay, so Spark Notes, Timu Harry Jousey talks to Madison. Okay. They talk for a while. I'm gonna continue calling him Timu Harry Jousey, and that's because I think that's what he looks like. Also, first of all, I'm empathetic for his childhood bullying. I'm absolutely empathetic towards that. However, there is some stuff online, and it's alleged about him preying on underage girls and stuff in his cheese. Yeah, he also described himself and said that he had an afro, and then he said it was unattractive, like that he was using that as like adjectives to describe how unattractive he was. I didn't like that.
So, yeah, sorry, not to interrupt, but
No, you didn't.
I love that you also, like, this is how we're the same, immediately clocked. I felt bad because I'm trying not to be like immediately make jokes about their looks or anything,
Me
but
too.
I was like, it's giving discount Harry Jowsey. Like, immediately, I could not get it out of my mind. So I just think
Me
it's
too.
hilarious that you also clocked that. But yeah, so when he was telling his story, like, I agree with you. I'm always empathetic, no matter like, who you are, what your race is. Like, if you experience bullying, like, that's going to affect you. Your experience is your experience, and that's valid. However, two things can be true. And one major thing, I don't know how much you know about this, but like a lot of white men will especially straight passing white men, will talk about their experience being bullied when they were younger, and specifically talk about having a curly fro, or having like a mini afro, or back when I had an afro. This is like a narrative that us, like, in the Black community, have heard time and time again. And it's very, I hate to say like anti-black, but like, in a sense,
It
like,
is.
you're equating that afro, which is something that naturally occurs with black people, to your experience being bullied and being unattractive. And so as soon as he said that, it's just like, I'm like, of course, like, of course, like, it's just, there's no awareness of, even if that's really, like, you really believed it, or you have proof that it was something to do with the afro or whatever, you still have to be a little bit aware that that's not a
You're
good thing.
implying that that hair texture is like unattractive. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like that's what it feels like.
on
It's like
national television, you're implying that that had anything to do with you being bullied, when there's people who literally actually have afros, you know what I mean, and
right.
actually are looked at differently in society. So anyway, I just always hated that narrative, and so when he said that, I was immediately put off. And also, like, it doesn't feel like, he didn't feel like he was talking about it, at first, or maybe not at first. There was a point where it just felt like he's not talking about his bullying in a meaningful way, where you can understand like his experience, and other people, maybe younger people, can say like, like, oh, I moved past this is whatever.
Like Alan from Married at First Sight talked about how he didn't feel like he fit the mold for like typical masculinity, and how his
Yes,
dad made him feel bad on that. Relatable to a lot of people, because it's like it's an experience that I'm sure lots of men can relate to, that felt that way by their fathers specifically. Like it's
exactly.
not like the way that he was talking.
Yeah, thank you for articulating that. And I know, of course, like, in the moment, he was just expressing it the way he thought. But like you said, Alan's an example. He's another straight white man who was able to get details, and you can see. And for me particularly, like, I do actually really always have a lot of empathy and a soft spot when I hear people, like real life people, talking about their childhood experiences that really affected them. And even if I can't directly relate, I can feel for them. And it's like, it was a little hard because he wasn't putting any real language behind it that anyone could really understand. And it's like, no offense, we haven't seen the pictures. I think he said he was like heavier or something. I don't remember.
Hmm.
But like, at the end of the day, no offense, like, kids are mean, right? Sometimes. Yeah, these things happen when you grow up and you're, whatever. But is that your whole, are you trying to say that's your whole personality now? Are you like understanding that you still had a sense of privilege? Like, where, it's a little hard.
And it's
Yeah.
also like, unfortunately too, because of the allegations that are out there about him in his 20s selling alcohol to minors, partying exclusively with 16 and 17-year-olds. So like, I'll just read it really quick since we're on the topic so that I don't like misspeak. But someone said, I was his roommate when I was 19 and he was 20. He used to bring underage girls over for music lessons where he'd then have them perform oral on him. If any woman called him out for his behavior, he would label them a psycho who was obsessed with him. He'd go into my room and use things when I wasn't home. Another person said, the logical liar. When my friends and I were 16, 17, he would take advantage of us because of our age when he was in his 20s. I hope this post doesn't get taken down. And then on a separate thread, somebody said, we'll not be making a video about this, but Alex used to throw parties in his 20s and would invite only high schoolers, was 16, 17, underage drinking while he was banging my friend. And someone responded to them and said, can verify he was best friends with my best friend for a decade and he prefers his girlfriends to, in quotes, dress and act young. Yeesh. So it's just like reading those things sticks with you as you watch the show.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so awful to hear. Really. Yeah, that's rough. I don't even know
The men on this season.
Yeah, I know. And it's like even when we were talking about his like bullying story, like you're right, there was some acknowledgement of like I'm this happened to me, so now I want to be better, like a little bit. But I think for me, unfortunately, the egregiousness of the claim, the like Afro comment, I think really just
Stuck out.
it just like flipped a switch for me because it's like, first of all, just even repeating that, if you're saying you want to like help people every time you see somebody who's struggling, you want to support and blah, 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 then also you probably have the awareness, especially you probably told the story before, like the best thing to do is not take a trait of somebody else, people of color, and imply that that's something bad. Like, I just feel like you have to be careful with your language, and it's just not whatever. So it already like gave me bad vibes about him, and then you go on to find out that he's all
got these allegations.
Like, I don't want to say classic, but in a way it's like some of these people, no offense, should just not be coming onto the show. Like that's my thing. It's like, okay, you have all these different issues, we understand, but also please work on them,
I just read something that I totally forgot happened. So quick side note, we'll do spark notes. Okay, Meg's feet, disgusting. The amount of feet this season, disgusting. You guys should be ashamed of yourself.
It's so true. Why is there so much feet? Oh my god!
I saw every space between her toe. I saw like the bottom of her feet. Thinking about sitting on the couch after Meg, the feet this season, everybody's dirty socks. Put your foot in a slipper. Give them a Love is Blind slipper. I don't ever want to see their feet again. It was absolutely disgusting.
Oh my gosh, so awful.
Oh, also, as she was barefoot in the pods, she was talking about Joe Rogan. You know that expression, barefoot in the pregnant cooking in the kitchen, barefoot in the pods talking about Joe Rogan. That's Meg. Insane. As soon as she said Joe Rogan, I'm mentally tapping out of taking her serious.
As soon as she said it, I was like, oh, okay. I'm like,
for the duration.
Oh, she's could be interesting, quirky. Nope. Like I was listening to this Joe Rogan podcast. Immediately no.
Like to say that as a serious statement, as if you weren't listening to it, to like, I don't know, hate on it, write an article, like, I don't know. Insane.
Lack of awareness. This is what I mean. Like sometimes I'm like, do you guys live in the same universe that we're living in? Because who would casually feel so comfortable being like, yeah, I was just listening to Joe Rogan.
And that's part of her being a pick-me as well, because I believe that she said that thinking that he listens to him.
True. Very
that's like
true.
her being like, I drink craft beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I love whiskey on the rocks and scotch. I can't even talk. No, you don't, bitch. Like, okay, I doubt that you do.
So true.
I forgot how aggressive Dave was with his sexual comments until I'm seeing my note right now.
Yeah.
The amount of sexual comments he made. He's on his second date with Molly. And he's like, so is there anything that's off limits in the bedroom? What kind of kisser are you? Are you an aggressive kisser? Are you a slow kisser? Like, what kind of question is that?
I don't know. And it's a little like, I don't know why these guys were so sexually charged or something, because it's like, maybe they're just so bored because they don't have anything else to talk about. He's just
Do they pop a
immediately
Viagra in all of their smoothies? Like all of
no,
them are
like
charged
I
up.
think so because it's like, oh my gosh, like it's so interesting too because it's like you have all this time with these people and these are the conversations we're having. And Dave is just, I don't know. I can't get past him. I don't think he's I just don't like his intentions ever or like how he goes about anything. Just even the sexual stuff. It's like, calm down, buddy. Like, I don't know.
Calm down. Lauren, this is why I feel like they're also living in their own world. Lauren went to the tattoo parlor. She said, I want FTP. I'm thinking, all right, fuck yeah. Fuck the police. Fuck the patriarchy.
It is
What?
so like
Lauren, you cannot create your own fucking acronym after this one is already a thing, okay?
I
Like you
think it's like
can.
2012, like, oh my gosh, like, how are we gonna like resist? We are gonna say like
Like, Lauren, I need you to be so for real. Your tattoo will always say fuck the police to me, regardless of what you say it is. But yeah, like fuck the patriarchy. But like, Lauren, if you think that you're gonna fuck any part of the patriarchy while you're with Dave,
I
he'll
know.
be the patriarchy will be fucking you, my gal. You need
No,
to change your letters.
literally,
Patriarchy fucks me. Like, you need to change your tattoo immediately.
literally and figuratively.
It's like it's a leave. Yes, just pretend I said all of that at once. I just combined all like 5 words. Okay, episode 2. Let's see.
We're still not even at
Okay,
episode 2.
episode 2, everyone, buckle up. Don't worry, we're gonna get through the remaining 4 episodes a lot quicker. The first
Yes.
episode, where you're like getting to know everybody, you're meeting the main players. That's the thing. Episode 2, canceled.
Really?
Okay, Sarah and Ben are on a date, and they talk about Ben's religion. Okay, she says her best friend is gay, my number one. But she was talking about her sister, wasn't she? I don't know
Yes,
why I
sure.
wrote that. Okay, so her sister. And the dating culture in, I almost called it Utah, and Minnesota must be so fucking different because to ask someone if they would be comfortable around her sister, like just like took me aback for a
But this
second.
is what I'm talking about. They live in a different world. I'm not trying to be mean, but these conversations are insane. Like, I understand there are people who aren't from the big city, whatever, obviously. Like, I get that. But at some level, what do you mean in 2025? I wouldn't even ask somebody if, I mean, obviously we're in the pod, so I guess you have to technically ask before the marriage, but like, to even think there's a question of would you accept my sister because she's gay?
Like,
Is like
I need people to come to terms with the fact that if they think that their Christianity is contingent upon whether or not they can control everybody's sexuality around them, they need to do a lot of reflection.
like what kind of religion? And who like I just feel like from me, and obviously I'm like as a person who obviously is always going to stand up for equal rights. I just think there's no question. Like I wouldn't even be posing it. It's more so like you're defending the, you know what I mean? Not defending, but you're like, I don't accept anyone in my life who doesn't accept my sister, period, or doesn't accept, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like this idea of like, there has to be like an acceptance, like, even, and if your religion, if it isn't clear as day that you support all people, your religion is, I'm sorry, you need to think about something about your principles or something, because at the end of the day, what would, you know what I mean, why would that affect, and I get it, I understand, I'm not saying this in a way of like I don't actually understand how these things are framed in religion and stuff, but I think in 2025 with people our age, like 30s and stuff, I do think there needs to be some level of like, okay, we know the situation now, right? We understand where things are. The country specifically is so divisive. Like, we are not quite like, this is point blank period. Either you're for human rights, you know what I mean? You're for
And you
all
know what?
people.
This is a good reminder of like when Trump won office, it's like, oh my God, like digesting the fact that that many people actually support him. But
That's
then
what I'm
it's like
saying.
seeing in places like this and the conversations that they're having that are so out of touch, so dated, so delusional. What I think is, I think this season is truly representative of where we are as a country. And I
Yes.
think we have regressed so far that the editors feel comfortable showing a lot of these conversations. And I feel like even last season, that moment where we talked about Palestine, I doubt they would put that in right now. This
And
season.
that's what I mean when I say like it's I mean, I sound like a broken record, keep going back about this, like how it's giving lack of DEI, like how the country,
It is
how Trump
though.
is like, we don't want DEI and stuff. Like that's what it's giving. And across the board, through the whole first 6 episodes, I feel like that's what it is giving. And I'm not trying to put people down from
Me
any
either.
certain place, but it's just really sad to see because there's no this level of disconnect. And yeah, like you said, it shows so many people in our country are really in that mindset, like really considering, oh my gosh, like are you going to be basically anti anything at this point because of your religion, but or just generally. Like I feel like I wish we could just move through a world where it's like it's just not being accepted, right? And I know that's not the world, but just
Exactly.
especially in this circumstance, these we're talking about a show based on the premise of not focusing on what anyone looks like, any groups they belong to, but just who they are as a person. That is the premise, if you really think about what it's supposed to be.
And I think that's why this show sucks, because you can't remove who people are and the values they have, or even the way that people look as a piece of their personality. Because the fact is, people do see color, and
Hmm.
ultimately pretending like people don't have like you know what I mean, like pretending that people don't have implicit biases and stuff, and like they're removing a real layer of reality from things, and then you see people try to figure out things, like Dave slipped in there that he was white. You know what I mean? Molly's response, without saying that she's white, told me that she is too. She related to him with her childhood experience. Like Garrett last season, he thought that Taylor was being evasive for not saying what race she was, but he didn't think that way until he knew that she wasn't white. You know what I mean?
And
So
that's
it's
sort of
like
like, yeah, they're almost searching for some kind of like,
context clues.
yes, some confirmation that they're all white. That they're
Yes.
just like, it's just that's another reason why I think this season is painful because we are, especially just because of the state of the world and the turmoil that is going on right now, and it's in our faces constantly. It makes it even more painful, I think, to the level of to watch this, where it's like literally like, you guys care so much. We are like our world is literally based on life. Exactly. Like, what would even think for a white I mean maybe I feel like you probably wouldn't
Yeah,
even
ask me.
what goes up through somebody's mind as a white person, like I hope this person, like if you're going on a blind date, I hope this person is white. Why? What value does that bring?
Yeah.
Like what would be, I just don't
I
understand.
think white people say that with hopes that they're not going to be on a date with anybody who can make them feel bad about themselves. Like white people see another white person and they're like, okay, if I say something offensive, you probably have thought it too. Or like, you're going to understand this too, Betsy. You know, you've thought about that. Like, I feel like they feel like preemptively, like, oh, I'm not going to get called on anything. And then that already lets you know preliminarily that they're problematic. You know what I mean?
Something that, I mean, it could be. I guess I'm just thinking right now about my own experience with my like white people in my life and my friends and stuff. Like, I don't remember them in dating and stuff like ever like considering that. Like for example, my childhood best friend who's white, who in high school, or I guess I shouldn't say childhood, I guess it's like 8th grade, but like we went through school together. And she was traveling the world. She lived in a ton of different places. She dated all types of people. We never had like, I never remember her mentioning or having conversations around like, hey, like, I mean, it wouldn't be a conversation, I guess, but like, it didn't ever seem like this is something she was actively thinking about. Like, I'm going to date and marry like other white people, or like it was a thing. Like, anytime she dated somebody of another race, like, it never sounded like an issue. Like, obviously, there are things you have to talk about or whatever to get through, but like, it was just kind of like normal. Like, you're dating, you see who you like, who you connect with. And now I feel like, especially with these shows, it just feels like they literally want other white people. Maybe it is location based. I don't know, but it's like it is. Maybe it's the state of the world. I don't know.
Huh?
At this point, I'm like, aren't we in 2025? But I guess it's not.
Okay, this is crazy. Two things. Dave is Abby Lee Miller in female form, because the fact that he starts everything with, so on the bottom is Molly. Could have been good, but you did bad. And then he's like, Lauren, you're on the top. Like, he consistently gives them pyramid rankings every episode, which, if he wasn't so deplorable, would kind of send me, just out of the fact that he's so dumb. But the way that he treats women like objects,
Yeah.
objectifies them, very telling. Molly's response, I can't think of a bigger pick me. I'm so sorry, Molly. Like, and I wrote down the quote, she told Dave, short of murder, there's nothing I wouldn't accept from your past.
Yeah.
Everyone has a past. Are
This
you fucking kidding
this
me?
is what I'm saying. I don't understand how you could think or feel that. It's just like, I don't understand these people. Like, I genuinely don't.
I don't understand it either because, okay, talking about not getting deep, then we go to Mason. Okay, he has a couple of dates. He's talking to Madison. He's talking to Meg. Okay, and he asks both of them what their Halloween costumes are,
Oh,
as
yeah.
if he's gonna like get to know them from that. I just don't understand them. I go back and forth. So Madison, on one hand, I do think she trauma dumped. Like, I do think that she like trauma dumped, talked a lot about trauma. On another hand, I'm like conflicted because it's like you do have to get to know someone. Like, in theory, you are supposed to open up to someone, and if you have to do that in 6 dates, that kind of looks like word vomit and like telling them everything about your life. Like, unfortunately, but then it's also like there's a piece of me that feels like that discernment comes in where it's like this person doesn't deserve to know your story yet and they haven't proved to be trustworthy. So like certain things give them and other things like they don't need to know right now.
Yeah. No,
So
I
it's
agree.
both.
It was a little rough, but I think also I just don't know where I land with her now because I
Mhm.
don't really know. It was strange. Also, like I don't see a genuine connection really between these people. So that makes it even more strange because like sometimes when you're getting to know somebody and yeah, like for example, you go on a first date, you're really vibing, you're really connecting and you start giving a little bit to oversharing and stuff that it happens and of course like you said in this context but then also it did feel a little like okay she's telling this guy her story she's telling this guy her story she just has to tell them every single thing but then also like how does she feel about them and it felt like they're a little bit disposable it was just like I don't know I don't
I
it
couldn't
was
keep up with her. Her
yeah
and Meg felt very similar from the fact like I don't feel like I know you.
yeah
Despite hearing all of these details about your life, I don't
hmm
feel like I have a good understanding of who you are and I don't feel like I know you. One side note, and please put in the comments if you're listening to this. I'm so curious. I don't think we've ever thought about this. Where are they sleeping during these pods? Do you think they go to a hotel at
I
the
think
end
they
of the
said they go
day?
to a hotel I'm pretty sure
Okay, so they're going to a hotel and then they're coming back to the warehouse,
I
right?
think
Okay. That's valid. Meg says to Mason that she likes to build forts. Her conversations are like a 3-year-old, except like perverse, because then she's like, I want to buy a new house. Like, I want to have sex on the floor. I don't want to unpack anything. I just want to eat Chinese food. And I'm like, you have watched way too many movies. Like, you're not even in reality anymore. Episode 3. Okay, so Sarah goes on a date with Ben and she talks about how she has talked to other people in this process about how her sister's LGBTQ and like they seem to be fine with it in the moment and then they didn't show up for a second date. And Ben like doesn't really give her much encouragement on that. So like again, I don't know. I don't know what Sarah thinks that she's even like protecting her family from. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, Sarah, you claim to have all of these values, but like everything that you're being met with is not giving reassurance.
I know, which is just kind of like that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's just kind of she's trying to stand up for her like family, her values and stuff, but then because there's no real like support that she's just like, okay, well, I have to stay in the show. I want to stay in the show. I want to move forward. I want to get married.
Okay. So Dave and Molly talk about politics. And he talks about he doesn't think that someone's politics define whether or not you can be friends with someone. He says, I hate when people say you can't love someone because of their politics. Now, Molly is in agreement with him because she says that both of her parents have never been the same political party. So she doesn't think that you have to be. And I just think, like, again, wishful thinking, not going to happen. Why would you even want to be in a position to where you're constantly trying to educate and explain something to someone? The only point I want to make about Dave is that Dave acts like he walks the middle of the line and he's like, like I see both point. It's like, I see
Yeah.
taxes for Republicans and I see this for Democrats. And it's like, you feel very strongly about being a Republican. And I wish that people would just feel, you know what? Just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it. Make yourself a known, not safe space. Just say
Yeah.
it
No, I know.
and then go forward.
I agree. It's like a lot of tiptoeing around that's like what people who do walk the line do, right? Like it's just easier for them to tiptoe around it, but still have their secret, secret hateful beliefs. I mean, I shouldn't say hateful, but you know what I
But they
mean.
are hateful because
Yeah.
even like, and then he was talking about abortion also, and he's like, like, I think women should be able to get it if their health is at risk
Oh
or
yeah.
if, they've been assaulted. And it's like, so you do put a stipulation on women's
Yeah.
lives. It's not just like you trust women to have discernment. So both of those women are pick-me's to me for not walking away. Madison and Alex are having hiccups in the relationship because she said that she's conflict avoidant. I think that we slowly see him start trying to back out of his relationship with her, like these next few episodes. And I feel like he's using that one thing about her being avoidant as like the big deal breaker of sorts. Episode 4. Okay. This is the episode. Episode 4 is the fucking episode where Ben and Sarah have a conversation because she's again bringing up politics. And I think that this says something as well. The fact that she feels so unresolved and so unconvinced by Ben the first time that they talked about conversation, I think should have told her that like she should have trusted her gut. If she did have a gut feeling, she certainly ignored it. And I think that that's the biggest problem of white women. When I see other white women end up ultimately being with a conservative guy, they ultimately care more about male validation and the convenience of not being alone than they do their values. So Ben and Sarah, and trigger warning for this conversation, Love is Blind didn't provide a trigger warning, which was like honestly unsettling as well because they had such a lack of care talking about George Floyd, police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and even the fact, on one hand, it's a conversation that would happen on a date that you should have with your partner. On the other hand, the fact that he challenged her and didn't just agree, and that they're now debating whether or not they agreed with Black Lives Matter and whether or not they value Black lives was insane to me and so privileged. But she started the conversation with she wanted to talk about some controversial things, which also to me, I just language is important. This could be controversial. Says a lot about not only who she surrounds herself with, but what Minnesota or Minneapolis and the subculture there is like.
No, I agree. And I think also it's a little, this is what we were kind of talking about before with Sarah, like, even though she's trying to like technically address issues and like stand up for these causes, it's like you can still tell that she's not confident in it because it's, okay, let's talk about this controversial topic. Would you be okay with my sister being gay? Like, these things are not she's not very much like,
These are my values. If you're not okay
yeah,
with it, you're fucking out.
like I want to see where your head is at with, or like what are your thoughts on the police brutality? Like, it's some things can just be like point blank period straight up said, and she's still kind of like pussyfooting around. Like, I guess that's not the phrase, but like
That's exactly what she's doing.
I can appreciate her even having the wherewithal to bring this stuff up. At the same time, you can still see the underlying, like, what's the word? Yeah, just how it's all kind of very, I don't want to say performative, but very, when you're coming from like a privileged place, it's still very much like an option kind of thing. Like, it's not like,
You don't
hey,
have to address this. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So
Yes.
it's like, yes, I'm addressing it, I'm trying, this is important to me, but it's also like, even if he's not on the same page as you, I'm still gonna date him. Like, it's also
That's
like,
why it feels performative because even after when that's why it is performative, not feels performative. That's why it is performative. Okay, so Ben's response though, because I want to talk about Ben. It's been a lot of me talking about Sarah and putting responsibility on her, but like, let's talk about Ben and his concerning responses. And it's almost like his responses weren't you didn't almost need to dive deep on them because he said what he said. You know what I mean? Like he's like, I'm kind of ignorant to that. And as long as I don't know, it's not going to do much. So he said, on one hand, he's saying he's kind of ignorant to it. So as long as he stays ignorant, it's not like his opinion or his voice is going to do much, but you're simultaneously wanting to stay ignorant so that you don't have an opinion. And you have a fucking opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have an opinion. And if you were to talk to him behind the scenes, I guarantee that he either sided with police or is against Black Lives Matter. That
Yeah,
was my
and they
interpretation.
live in Minnesota.
You're right there.
So I mean, you have to have some thoughts. Like this is we're talking about 2020. We're not like this is very huge recent major event. Like it's just silly.
But it is telling, of course, he wasn't impacted or devastated because it did not immediately
Yeah.
impact him or his loved ones. So after he says that he tries to remain ignorant, she's like, okay, what are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter? His response, I'm not one way or the other. I try to keep out of it. Why would you want to keep out of it? Why would you not want to use your voice and your privilege? And she does try to say that to him. But the fact that she wasn't so disgusted with him, I would have got up and walked out.
That's the standing on business that we're talking about when we're really talking about real advocacy, real allyship. You have to be fully committed, and you have to be willing to say, even if I'm putting my spot on this show, my whatever at risk, I'm going to stand up for what's right, period. And that's the thing. If you are saying that you support George Floyd, or sorry, not support him, but like you, well, yeah, I guess you understand that he was wrongfully murdered, like, and you understand and accept the police brutality aspect of it. You also have to be willing to say, this person who I'm going to potentially consider as my potential long-term partner is saying that they don't want any involvement in it, in something that's very literally black and white. You have to be willing to walk away from that. And if you're not, then as a ally, or as in this case, like, you're a white person who's saying that you're on the right side, you're not standing up for it. Questioning, yes, great, okay, you made a little
You
question, but
asked,
you're also
like, bare minimum. You did the bare minimum. You don't get claps for the
exactly.
bare fucking minimum.
Yeah.
So Ben asks her, do you know if you'd be able to marry someone who's not right next to you on what you believe right now? She should have said no. She should have said, I'm not willing to do that. She said she wants someone on the same page about basic human rights, and Ben thinks his beliefs lie more towards what he's thinking, but he says he doesn't know how to intelligently talk about it, and neither does Sarah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like I shouldn't say she's learning it for the first time. I do want to be clear that I feel some level of gratitude towards the fact that she's going on this show and she's addressing it, because point blank period, we don't even have people doing that. So, like, we're gonna say, as a white woman, she's at least doing the bare minimum, right? At the same time, it does seem like this is the first time she meaningfully had to address these things with a partner, or maybe not just with a partner, I don't know, with somebody who she doesn't know, I guess, and kind of like go any further than just the I support Black Lives Matter. I support the LGBTQ plus IA community, like, to, like, beyond, like, really having to, like, hammer it in. It seems like this is her first time having to do that, which, honestly, fair. Like, if you came from that certain environment and you've never been really challenged with it, and maybe 2020, like, for a lot of people, I mean, I've heard of in my just, like, general vicinity, it was the first time for especially age wise, for a lot of, like, people to realize, oh my gosh, like, this stuff is happening in real time, like, right on and it's unfair. It did spark for a lot of people. That being said, it does make it feel a little less like, it's hard to be like, yeah, Sarah, like, you're killing it, like, you're doing what needs to be done, because she's not there yet. She's not pushing. She's
It's
not.
more likely that she would regress. To chime in on what you were saying, what I appreciate is that Sarah was honest about her journey. I think that people a lot of times try to make look nice their political journey, and I think a lot of times it's not. You know what I mean? I think that there are tons of white women who never felt inclined to ever get politically involved until it personally impacted them. And then once it personally impacted them, they had the realization and acceptance that it impacted others. And then they were like, wow, this has been happening. So that's not uncommon. So I appreciate her being out forthcoming about her journey, because although she didn't outright say I wasn't interested until Trump took office, to me that's what that was saying.
Yeah.
Because you didn't take interest because you were not impacted in any way. And I do appreciate her saying that seeing that happen in her city is something that profoundly changed her relationship with police, or if that's what she's saying. I'm kind of putting words in her mouth now, you know what I mean? But like I do appreciate her acknowledging that, but like simultaneously it feels so like surface level and so bare minimum, because like we just said, she's not willing to change her relationships. Are you out there and are you protesting? Are you showing up and doing things, or are you worried about how your friends will see that? Are you giving your money, because that's most important? Are you giving your money because like that's how you can be a further ally? So it's like I appreciate her bringing up the conversation because she's one of the few who had conversations on the show. But this won't be the last we hear them have political conversations, I'm sure.
Yeah.
She's going to regret this decision. She's going to regret this decision. If she truly feels as she is, she's going to deeply regret that decision. But yeah, so yeah, to make clear, like I do appreciate those things, but like as far as her allyship or like giving her accolades, like no, because you didn't do anything with that. It was purely at this point, I can't say that if you actually feel that way or if you wanted to make it seem like you feel that way on television. You know what I mean? So like I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Devin talks with Brittany about his struggles with what is it called?
Ibuprofen.
Okay, so I'll just say pharmaceuticals. Like his struggle and addiction with pharmaceuticals. And I want to bring up a good point because I saw some conversation around the fact of like ibuprofen is like not a real addiction. Like, think that, first of all, it probably wasn't ibuprofen. However, second of all, if it was, when you look at a bottle of ibuprofen, you're supposed to take 6 a day max. That's how much our liver can handle. That's how much we should be taking. If you're taking 20, 30, if you're taking an excess of anything, it is an addiction. You do have an addiction to it. So even if it is just ibuprofen, I don't feel like it's fair to like downplay it, because it's still something that you're taking that many times. Like, for example, cheese doesn't say on the package that it's addictive. However, if I need to eat 3 pounds of cheese a day, I'm addicted. Like that show, My Strange Addiction, people were addicted to doing lots of things. Like I can be addicted to ripping my hair out,
Yeah.
although that's not just an addiction. You know what I mean? So I want to talk about that caveat. I think a lot of it's like joke in a joking manner, but like on a serious note, you certainly can be addicted to ibuprofen. And if you're taking 20 a day, you have 10 years before you're going to, not even before your liver is going to start experiencing severe problems from that.
Yeah, that's really.
It is. So he talks about how he went to a dark place. Now, I have to say, similar to Madison, it did feel kind of like he told his stories back to back.
Yeah.
Like, but again, could be the editing. And also, like, I get it to some extent. Like, that is your story, that is your experience.
That doesn't sometimes, maybe it is just the editing on this season, but it does feel like regurgitating stories versus natural connection, and not every time, but sometimes, you know.
So he tells that to Brittany. And the thing is Brittany had so much compassion towards him in this conversation. That's part of why I wished he was a safer space to her when she was talking about her sexuality. She had a lot of grace for him. She shed tears for him. And then she talks about her experience and the things that she struggled with. And she talks about her experiences with women and coming to terms with her sexuality, a piece of her that she can't ignore, is what she said. And she also talks about how she can be with women, but she doesn't have the desire to marry a woman. And it's like, I do understand that. Now, because I'm not part of the LGBTQ community, I can't say whether or not that comes from a place of like having internalized homophobia. I don't know if the desire to be with, like, saying that you want to be with a man is because that's your preference, or if it's because that's the societal pressure that you feel or the religious pressure that you feel. So it's kind of hard to say, and maybe that's not something that anybody should judge from an outside perspective anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't. For me personally, I've heard that sentiment before, of course, and I think it's something that a lot of like queer people, I mean, I don't know, everyone wants to consider themselves something different in terms of how they identify. So just saying queer to be, that's how I identify, and to be like inclusive, I think I have heard that sentiment. And even as a woman had to figure out their sexuality later in life, I do think it is a lot of conditioning that plays the role in like immediately feeling like, well, I can't see myself if you haven't meaningfully been in like a long-term relationship with a woman or something, like saying I can't see myself marrying one. I can only see myself marrying a man, but that's also just because of how we're conditioned, right? We're not in a world where that would even be a traditional, anything to even like look towards. Like we're still very much in new phases, I guess, of people even accepting this idea that like same sex, relationships, marriage, and stuff like that. So I can understand. And I think it's a very real thing that, people have to deal with. However, I think there's still something a little bit harmful about that narrative because it does, yeah, it perpetuates that sentiment, right? That, and without any real acknowledgement of like, hey, like it's something I'm still, I mean, I guess she did kind of acknowledge that like she was figuring it out, but she seemed pretty clear at a certain point when she said, I know I will never marry a woman.
I
Where
didn't know if that was because she actually felt that way, not to cut you off, or if it was because he met her so many questions. Because like immediately he was like,
yeah,
"Well, is it multiple experiences or is it one?" And she was like, "It's multiple." And he was like, "Well, are you still attracted to women? How do you know that you won't?" You know what I mean? Like I feel like he had so many questions for her. I feel like those feelings came up for her, and
yeah,
she was sort of like
absolutely.
protecting herself.
Absolutely, which I can completely understand. Like I said, I don't have any judgment
Well, of
towards her
course,
for
yes,
it. It's just more so like it sucks because especially for us as Black women who have any experiences or, identify as anything LGBTQ plus IA other, it is a tough situation to be in because there are different layers to it, right? It adds additional layers to it. However, across the board, I think this idea of as a woman, you were taught that you should be in a partnership with a man. Like that's pretty across the board and it's pretty hard to escape when you're not already like super confident in your sexuality, if that makes sense. So I feel for her in
me
that
too.
way, but I also think, his response too is that there was room for support and growth and getting past this idea of okay, she's clearly struggling or not struggling, I guess, but like she's at least struggling to define it, right? And there is no room for grace, really. It's like you're being questioned then.
Right,
Okay,
like
how
pick
many?
one. It feels like very much like pick one.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then it's also
Mhm.
like it causes all this confusion. So you've been with multiple women or one, or oh, it makes a difference if it's one or multiple. Oh, so you don't like
Like,
you have
how gay are you? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like
exactly.
you're kind of like trying to measure, and like it's not, it shouldn't feel that way.
And
You know
then
what I
also
mean?
just realizing that that sentiment of I do not want to marry a man, if you're somebody who's identifying as queer or bisexual or what have you, it is a little like it's always kind of going to be rooted in what we've been taught and conditioned as a society, right? In terms of marriage and stuff, because that's not been a space for us to kind of like, oh, you don't think, okay, who are you going to marry when you get older? No, people tell little kids,
Right.
if they're a girl and a boy based on who they are, like, oh, you're going to be a stunner, like you're going to be a ladies man. It's not, you're going to, like it's very pointed. So it does, it is just unfortunate to see that she feels that way. But then also at the same time, there is this huge spectrum, right? So maybe there are people who genuinely are attracted to, the gender, all gender, everything, but still know in their hearts that they don't want to be with the person of the opposite gender, and they feel that to be true regardless of conditioning or not. So it's like it's hard because you want to leave room for every different experience and
Absolutely.
understanding, but at the same time some things just very much are, it's hard to see them, these ideas continue to be carried out because a lot of it is rooted in this, heteronormativity, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not saying it properly, but
No,
basically
you
it's,
are. I totally understand what you're saying. I
and it sucks
totally
that
follow that.
Devin couldn't be, yeah, just like show a lot more understanding and maybe more curiosity in the sense of wanting her to be a safe space, like you said, versus curiosity of like the number of women or how many times you've done this, or you know what I mean?
Like on one hand, yes, like everybody, he does have the right to vocalize his preference of like the type of relationship that he would like to have, the experiences that he's had dating. Like he does have the right to talk about that without it necessarily meaning that he is homophobic himself, I guess. Like there's a piece of me that acknowledges that that may not have been where he was coming from, but like the tone of the conversation seemed that way. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way that it came across. The reason it's hard not to see it that way is because it felt very like prying and judgmental. And like the comparison I'll give is if, as he was talking about his ibuprofen addiction, if she responded and said, well, how many ibuprofen? Like, or for how many years? Or
Hmm.
like, what if you have this happen again? Like, how can I know that when your back
Hmm.
goes out, you're not just going to jump right back to this addiction? Like, what you do you, or if she responded and said, you feel like you have, do you feel like you have an addictive personality? You know what I mean? So it's like,
And those are typical kind of like questions that people get when they're trying to communicate with maybe people who aren't more familiar with LGBTQ community and stuff, and that's where it's a little tough because you're
it
right. I
just
don't
lacks
think he
sensitivity.
definitely.
It lacks sensitivity and like
Exactly.
experience with having those conversations.
Exactly. And I think especially in an experiment like this, you would want to go into it being a little bit more open. And what you said about him having, it's fair that he can share his experience, or, he has what he wants out of a relationship, which I think is true. I also think if we're talking about love is all that matters, personality and stuff, if and that's like what you want in a partner is somebody you connect with on these other levels. I don't really necessarily think their identity should change how you, if whether or not you would want to be their partner, because I do think ultimately whether or not you're actively thinking these things, it is a little bit discriminatory, just kind of like if you're going to say, you're only going to date, I mean, that's a little bit more. I won't even give that example because it's a little more tricky. But it feels like it still comes from a place of the the stigma that
Yes.
somebody who's bisexual, whatever it may be, is going to, if you get married to them, they'll never actually love you because they also like the other gender, or because they also, like it's just, it adds on to all those stigmatized, all the stigma, and I can't speak, stigma in general
There's
about.
part of that that I'm wondering because I don't know the root of where he's coming from. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know if he feels like what you said, like that stigmatized reaction of like, oh my gosh, she'll cheat on me, or like feeling like people who are LGBTQ plus, like they're like hypersexualized, like they can't be faithful. So I don't know if
Mhm.
he's coming from like that line of thinking, or if he's coming from the line of thinking that still may be rooted in some sort of like, I don't know, like hypermasculation or fear of being emasculated. I don't know if it comes from this or if it comes from a reasonable question of, will my partner be happy with me, or will I be asking them to suppress a piece of themselves because I would like a closed relationship to where we're strictly monogamous, and is it unfair to ask my partner who still has this as a piece of their identity to just be with me for forever?
Yeah.
And do you feel like you've now trapped a piece of yourself inside by being just with me exclusively? You know what I mean? Like, do you still feel like you're able to express all facets of who you are. So I don't know which side he's coming from. Like, is he, emotionally intelligent enough to be coming from that side? I can't say because we have seen so little of his conversations. But I
Yeah.
wonder if he is coming from that, if it's appropriate to wonder if if you'd be asking your partner to push themselves further down.
Yeah, which I think is fair. I think it also, yeah, like you said, it kind of still does come from that same place because at the end of the day, when she says, I'm monogamous, that's it. I'm monogamous.
That's like saying like, oh, like, yeah, exactly.
If
Like
you're
there's
a monogamous
still
person, you're wanting a
boundaries.
monogamous relationship and you're authentic to that, it's not going to matter what your sexuality is
Yeah,
because,
I just answered that for myself.
you know,
Totally.
I
Okay,
mean,
so it is still
it's not
rooted
an
in something though.
that's just kind of how I feel about it
Agreed.
in general. I just feel, and I think like a lot of people that I also knew who identify similarly, like think of it that way as well, which is just kind of like we're talking about like a different issue here, and that plays into these wrongful ideas that if you're not straight, you're
Incapable of
hypersexualized,
having
you're going
yeah.
to be, yeah, you're a cheater because you'll be more if you're interested in multiple
Or you're
genders.
never satisfied or
Yeah, you're never satisfied. You can never be happy with one person. You can never like a man as much as you like women or vice versa, whatever the case may be. So that's where it's just kind of, I think it's a little like, okay, well then you know that she's monogamous, you know that
right.
she wants to
Yeah, I
be with
just
one
agree.
person, you know that she likes men. So from there, what are your other concerns? Because are they valid if if that's the case?
100%.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, I'm glad we had that conversation because I think that's a good dialogue to have. Okay, so to wrap things up, because I literally say in my notes, I stopped watching the episodes intently, but here's what happened. Molly and Dave broke up. He gets engaged to Lauren, which is interesting because I thought they both had the realization that he was playing them and saying the same thing.
Me
Like
too.
he was like, "You're my number one." And then he was like, "I never told her she was my number one." Like, you're a liar. You're a huge liar. I also, it's hard to feel bad for either of them because both of them kind of like politically agreed with Dave. So I'm kind of just like, good luck,
Yeah.
ladies. Despite Sarah's apprehension at Ben's values, she still gets engaged to him. That's going to be something to watch for sure. Alex basically tries to convince Madison to break up with him and talks about how much Mason loves her and how he was in love with her and how he's a great guy. I think that he was being a wingman for for him basically because, like I
Yeah,
said, I think he didn't want to be with her.
absolutely. I agree.
Next up, Devin and Virginia get engaged. That's all I wrote for that. They get engaged.
There's nothing
Okay.
more to say about it, really.
Yeah, there's really nothing that happened. Daniel and Lexi get engaged. Wait, is it Lexi? Daniel and Taylor. See? Again, Lexi throughout all of my
Yes, yes,
notes.
yes.
Boots and Taylor get engaged. Um, the only couples with a shot is Joey and Monica and
Oh my
maybe
gosh.
Devin and Virginia.
I was just gonna say, I almost called him Riley. Yes, Joey and Monica. I think I agree. Devin and Virginia, I guess. I don't really see it for them yet,
Like we
but
don't know enough to say no, so I'm kind of all
yeah,
right.
exactly.
Here's a like here's to hoping. The episode ends with Taylor finding out about Daniel following her on Instagram, which I think we talked about in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, we definitely did, and I think it's just like I don't think I haven't changed my mind that much. I think at the end of the day, if that is the case, that is a little strange. And the only thing that for me that really hammers it in is his reaction, because I think regardless if somebody is going to come to you, like she was like acting like she was, or maybe she wasn't acting like, but she was showing she was very shaken up, and his responses weren't really like thinking this is wild. What do you mean? Can you give me more information?
He was pretty much like, "Wait a second, I deleted that picture."
Yeah, like I have a Christmas picture. That's basically, and we don't know. Maybe it's editing. I don't know, but he was not giving like I have no idea what she's talking about. This is confusing. Like when she was explaining, he's like, yeah, I can understand how that's concerned. So I don't know. And it is like, I do think I would personally feel a little strange. Like we talked about, it is kind of funny because in her world, it's like, oh my gosh, like I had all my information on my Instagram bio and he like studied me. Meanwhile, it's like the most basic things. But when you think about, like, I think about it just even my shoes or something, it's kind of like, I actually do share a lot of my life online.
Me
And
too.
so it's like if you looked at my Instagram, like I have a lot of stuff like
Same.
highlighting the Black Lives Matter, of course, and just all social justice issues and everything like that. So like if somebody, before going on a show like this where it's supposed to be completely, you don't know me, and you happen to already have followed me and seen some of my stuff, I would be like, oh my gosh, because you now, like, you're not
If
giving.
someone saw me on TikTok, they would know like 50% of my personality.
Exactly, that's what I mean. And then
Yes.
also, it's just, I mean, who knows? Maybe it was just the Instagram thing, but also the level of coincidence. Like they were saying that Minnesota is small, so I don't really have a good understanding. Maybe that's where I'm missing it, because obviously in New York City, it's like the odds of you literally having mutuals, seeing somebody on Instagram, following them without knowing them, and then going on this show,
That would be
and
insane.
like the odds are very low. So maybe in Minnesota it's very high, but it does feel like a little bit strange that he's like, no, I haven't seen your profile, I don't recognize you. And like, did you see the video I showed you where he reiterated in the pods, like, what is your Instagram handle? Like he brought that up in the pods. And he brought up like he
Leaky
said two
Daniel.
things about like social media. Like, so that's the only other thing where I'm like, okay, it's just kind of weird no matter how you switch it, especially because he didn't come straight up with like a response like, yeah, actually, I remember it's so crazy like a few months ago, whatever, you know what I mean? Or no, this never happened. Like he was just very much middle of the road. So I
I
don't
think
know.
a producer told her about him, which makes it even weirder. Like we should be side-eyeing the producer who slipped the cast because that's weird.
Oh, that
That's weird.
totally. It's so weird. And I think I can understand, but like you said, I can understand why she's, stressed or feels weird about it. I can also understand that she probably is not vibing, she's not getting the vibe. And this feels probably even more heightened to her, where it's like, okay, well, here's my out kind of thing. And I'm not saying she's intentionally thinking about
I
it,
think
but it
that she
might
is.
feel that way, where she was like, because she seemed like pretty authentic in the confessional when she's saying, like, he is it's okay, like, if he's a little they asked her, like, if he's a little
Right.
shorter or something, I think, and she was like she seemed, like, okay about it, like, it didn't seem like the end of the world, so I don't think that she would go above and beyond to fake this whole, like, stressful situation just to be out of it. I think it's, like, a circumstantial thing where it's, like, the combination of factors. Not only were you not really what I was looking for type-wise, or there's no attraction, but also now I have this weird social media thing to worry about, you know?
Yeah, I think she wasn't attracted to him. And then when she found out that he followed her, she was even further creeped out. And I don't
Mhm.
really blame her for that, to be honest.
He just
You
gave her
would
the
think of, wait, what'd you say?
I feel like it just gave her the ick, you know?
Exactly. And I don't blame her for that. Daniel's shoes gave me the ick. You would think that there was like so much happening because we talked for 2 hours and
I know.
recapped Love is Blind, but actually this was the most boring first 6 episodes. So
I
hopefully
know.
watching us talk, you guys had a better time than actually watching the show. Make sure to like this video. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to leave me a review. Make sure that you're following Toma on all platforms. Can you please say your handle again?
Oh, yeah, it's my full name, Tomasilienne. You could tag it in the comments.
Okay,
And
well,
thanks for having me. I love chatting with you. I told you, it's so funny. 2 hours of chatting. Only we could do that after just continuously talking about how boring this
I
is.
said my episode will be 20 minutes. It'll be easy. There's nothing to talk about. We talk for 2 hours on
But it was
everything.
great. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. Everybody, have a fantastic evening. Love is Blind, episode 7, has 30 minutes. Do you know you have 30 minutes? You have 30 minutes. It has 30 minutes to suck me in, or I'm done. I'm done.
Agreed.